Hello, this is the ByteWeasel, and in this video we'll be looking at what it takes to actually publish our Roblox Tycoon game. We'll be making sure that it's set to public so that it shows up in Roblox search and people can find it, join in, and start to play. So I think this is episode 20 of our Tycoon series, and we've come a long way since the basic base plate that had absolutely nothing on it. We have a whole working Tycoon here. Now, it's not as finished as I would probably like it to be, but in terms of being able to publish it, I think we're in a good spot, right? People could join the game, they could buy some stuff and sort of enjoy it, but mostly I want people to know, hey, if you join this game, yeah, the Tycoon isn't that great, but you can come watch these tutorial videos and make one yourself that is much better. So, to that end, between last episode and this one, I basically added these couple of surface GUIs with some sort of text on there that tells people, hey, you can learn how to make your own version of this Tycoon, but do a lot better because you'll have a lot more time than I do in these videos by coming to watch these tutorial series. So, if anyone does happen to join in here, hopefully they'll come back and they'll learn how to create their own Roblox game, just like this. I've also gone through and sort of made the game slightly more interesting by adding a whole bunch of different buttons and new droppers and things. And I've sort of reversed the direction of this conveyor belt because I thought that made more sense to me, having the seller at this end rather than the other end. But I haven't done anything new in terms of mechanics. No code has really changed. I've just been using all the different systems that we've done up until this episode to add these things and make my Tycoon longer. The only other thing that I've done in terms of design is one, make the stairs a nicer brown color, and two, make this nice animated belt. So let me show you how I've done that. And it's actually really, really easy. So if I go over into our template and I go down into the belt, what you'll see is before it was just a blue part. Now inside the belt, what I've done is I've added a beam. Now a beam is basically this thing built into Roblox that allows you to create a texture and stretch that texture between any 2 points in the world, right? So I found a texture on the toolbox, which is this one here, and you can copy that ID if you really want it. It's basically some arrows, and I've added 2 attachment points. One on this end of the belt right here, and one on that end of the belt over there. And then I have this beam that basically just has attachment 0 set to this one, and attachment 1 set to that one. And what that does is it stretches that beam texture between them. And then when you have a beam, you can set their texture speed to be a certain value, and that will basically animate it. So what I've done there is I've wrapped the texture with this texture mode wrap so that it repeats over and over again. And I've set the texture speed to be -1, so it sort of moves in that direction. And that just makes it look a little bit better. So you can add something like this to your game if you like. A couple of attachments on the belt and a beam that stretches between them with a texture. So there you go. And then in my second story, because we haven't sort of finished the game, I've added another one of these signs, but this one says, sorry, this area is still under construction. Come back, watch the tutorial, along with a Robux donate button that people can sort of use to help me out. So here we go. Let's test it. So you can see these are the new signs that I added. And then if we teleport to our Tycoon, you'll see this is how it starts off now. We go over here and we get the dropper. And you see, I have done a tiny bit of balancing. Instead of it dropping $100 now, it just drops 1. And then, of course, the cost of everything has been reduced a whole bunch. Now, I wouldn't say I spent long enough balancing the game because I'm pretty sure there's still some scenarios where you get sort of a lot of just waiting around to get to the next button. And certainly, if you rebirth like a few times, you're going to run through the Tycoon pretty quick. So definitely take more time than I am to balance your game. But you can see now that each thing unlocks, now you have the ability to now choose, do I make a new dropper or do I update the existing dropper for cheaper? But now this goes up. Oh, so I guess I should save up for this dropper. But you can choose, see? So that's kind of how it works. I've also updated this sign because I found a way of creating this symbol inside a text label. And I think it looks really cool having this Roblox symbol instead of the words R dollar sign. That means Robux. So the way that you actually do this is by using a special Unicode character. And the way that it works in Roblox is to use Lua's Unicode system. So if I go into the buttons where we create these labels, actually, sorry, the Robux buttons, and I go into that on added piece, the way that I've done it is this used to say cost and then combined with the string R dollar sign. Instead, to get the Robux symbol, this is what you do. You have a backslash followed by a U. And this basically is an escape code to Lua that says, hey, this isn't really a backslash and a U. Whenever you see backslash and a U, I want you to read the next sort of letters in your string and convert that into a symbol. So this means Unicode symbol E002. And that, if you add this as a string somewhere inside Lua, it will create that Roblox symbol that you see, which I think is really cool. So even here in my design mode, it says R dollar, but when the code runs, we actually get that nice Unicode symbol at the front of it, which is the Robux symbol. So there you go. Those are the simple changes that I made between episodes. Nothing that you couldn't really do on your own, I hope. Basically adding more of everything that we've already done up until this point. I guess I also added these parts, which are just anchored lights. Anchored parts that look like lights. And there we go. So now it's time to publish our game and make sure other people could join it and play it. Now, I don't really expect people to enjoy playing this game because it's so short, but hopefully your game, by the time you publish it, is pretty fun and your friends can join in and have a good time. So the way that you actually publish a game in Roblox is really, really simple. You've probably seen it a bunch as you've been going through this file menu, but right here there is a Publish to Roblox button. And you can click this, and it basically allows you to fill in a whole bunch of information about your game. So you give it a name, you give it a description, and you sort of choose what devices are compatible with it. Now, for us, because we're a tycoon game and we don't really have much in terms of a UI that you need to sort of have a mouse for, you could tick console on. That allows people to play it if they're on an Xbox, for example. And you can also choose if you want to team create to allow people to join your game and help you code it, assuming you allow them to, and data sharing that sort of shares your code with Roblox so that they can train their AI model suggestions to be a little better. You can choose to turn these on or off as you see fit, but that's pretty much it. You can click create, and that is definitely one way of doing it. Now, I am not going to do it like this because there is another way that you can publish a game. And you see here, this creator dropdown, this is what I want to talk about in this episode. So right now, the only creator of this game, if I was to publish it, is me. But what I'd like to do is instead of publishing all my games under my own Roblox user account, I'd like to create a Roblox group and publish all my games under a group. Now, you don't have to do that at all. You can literally just press this create button right here, have the game published, and it will be ready for people to play. Now, I'm going to look at making a group because there are some advantages to making a group and publishing games under that group. So, groups are just a really good way of making a community around your different experiences. So if you're just publishing one game, yeah, you can publish it on your own account. But if you plan to publish a whole bunch of different games, it's really cool to have a group because a whole bunch of different people can join your group and find out about all the different games you've made. And you're able to sort of communicate with people on the group by using your social wall, giving a shout out and seeing what people are saying. So building a community around all your different experiences is really cool. And that's basically what a group is about. You can also sort of assign special people in your group certain roles so that if you have like a really good friend that's helping you make games, you can sort of assign them a developer role and then they get extra permissions to maybe edit the scripts or do things like that. So creating a group is one of the really cool things to do if you plan on producing a whole bunch of different games. And because I plan on making a whole bunch of different tutorials, I imagine collecting them all into one group will be very handy for me. So that's what I'm going to look at. So to actually create a group, you come on over to create.roblox.com and you sign in with your account. And then under this drop down here, you can choose create a group. Now, if you've already created a group, this drop down will be where you choose between looking at Creator Hub for your account or for any groups that you've made. Now, we don't have one, so we're going to create one today. And basically, you can upload an image, give it a name and a nice description. And then there is a one-time fee to create the group of 100 Robux. So that is the one downside of using a group rather than your own account, is that you have to pay 100 Robux to create the group in the first place. Now, you probably don't expect to create more than one group, and once you have the group, there is no like additional costs that you need to manage. So a one-time fee of 100 Robux is probably not too bad, hopefully, but do bear that in mind. If you want to use a group, you're going to need some Robux in your account. So currently I have a whopping 140. So we'll be able to create a group today, but just bear that in mind for you, is that there is a 100 Robux cost to create it. All right, so we are going to be ByteWeasel Games, and here is the description that I came up with. It's basically, hello, this is the ByteWeasel, and I'm a developer dedicated to sharing tutorials, guides, and tips to help people create fun and compelling Roblox games of their own. Experiences released under this group are made by me as part of tutorials and guides to explain how to make games and their mechanics. If you find something unfinished that you really wish had more to it, then you might be interested in following the tutorial yourself and making your own, better version of it. I hope you enjoy anything you find and maybe check out my tutorials sometime. So there we go, ByteWeasel Games. Let's create it. So once you've created your group, you'll see that it now appears in your dropdown. You can either be your own account or your group account. And there is a cost to changing the name of your group, so make sure that you sort of figure out what you want to call it before you click that first purchase button. But you can update the description and the image at any time for free. And then one of the things that you can do, sort of around building up your community for your group, is to add social links. So, for example, I could add a link to my YouTube channel, which would make sense. So, once you're done with that, you're basically ready to publish your game. So, for example, if I head on over to Creations, you'll see that I have no games published, and it wants me to launch Studio to be able to do that. So, if we head on back to our Studio, we can actually publish this game by going File, Publish to Roblox As. So what I have to choose is in here, instead of my games, I want to go into my group account, which is ByteWeasel Games. And I don't have anything here. So we're going to create a new game and put this one in there as our published game for the group. So I'm just going to call it the ByteWeasel Tycoon. Tycoon game built by me, ByteWeasel, during a tutorial series step by step. Come in and try out the game, then go watch my series and make your own much better version of it. Make sure you've selected your group as the creator, and then select which devices you want people to be able to join on. Now, I don't think there's anything stopping something like an Xbox from joining, so we'll turn on console, but I'm going to turn off Team Create because I don't expect anyone to collaborate with me, but I'll leave on data sharing because I don't mind if Roblox uses my code to sort of train their AI models. That seems fine. It's all public on YouTube anyway. So there we go. Once you're done, you can click Create. Once you click that button, you can head back on over to Creator Hub and refresh the page. And you should see your new Tycoon right there. Now, if I go into it, there's a whole bunch of different settings and information you can find out about your game. But when you first publish it, it is not public. So that's important to realize. You can publish a game and it is now there and it's available in Roblox search, but it's not actually public. So if I go over to settings, you'll see that it is still private. Making an experience private will shut down any running instances. So you can actually switch a game back from public to private if you want, but everyone will stop being able to play it, which I guess makes sense. But by default, it's going to be private. And that's good because we're not quite ready to make this game public yet. Because there is one important step that you need to do. When we published the game to our group, we had to actually create it as a brand new game, right? So, what that actually means is that we have now a brand new set of settings, a brand new set of data store tables, and we have a brand new set of developer and game passes in our monetization. And by default, that really means we have no settings, we have no data in our table, and we have no game passes or developer products. So, what we need to do is go back and recreate all of those things, but for this version of the published game, right? So the first time that we do this, we need to go into game settings, we have to go down to security, and we have to start turning these things back on. Now, I've already done it off video, but what you can see is that I've enabled access to the API services for Studio. I've also gone into monetization and I've created some developer products. And back on the website, I've created a game pass just like we had before. And you can go back and watch those previous episodes to know how we did that. But essentially, you have to remake them because we've created a brand new game and they don't have any of these things by default. So we need to go in, we need to create these things, and then we need to update our template where all of our buttons are. So this is my brand new Robux button at the top here, which is basically just a developer product. So you have to go down and you change the Robux ID. And if you recall, our existing Robux buttons, we have to update that ID for the Game Pass, and we have to update this one for the other developer product, right? And if you recall, the difference is this has a Game Pass tag. That's how it knows that this number relates to the Game Pass and not the developer product. So go ahead and update all of those things and update your game settings, such as access to APIs or anything else that you may have previously added while you were still saving to a file. And then make sure you head on over to your Robux purchases script and update those same IDs in here so that when you actually purchase the item, it knows what to do. Like, for example, when you purchase the chunk of money, we add in here 500 money, double money game pass, sets all that to true. And that will then link those things up via that same ID. And then it will all continue to work now that we've got this new sort of instance of the game. Now, while I was going through and I was sort of messing around, updating these buttons and looking at this stuff, what I did notice is that inside our Robux buttons, we've got this little bit of script here that could cause an issue in a published game. And maybe you've already seen this. Here we're calling a Roblox API called get product info. So if you remember, we pass in that Robux ID for each button. We look up the info so that we can update the label with how much it costs and what its name is. Now, one thing that might happen in a published game is that this API could fail because the Roblox API servers are just down or the internet is broken for some reason. And so, what we want to do is actually protect this call using pcall, protected call, which we've seen before. And another thing we can do is sort of cache the result. We only really need to ask Roblox, hey, what is the information for this Robux ID once? There's no point calling that API, which could fail over and over again. So let's make sure that we cache this value. So this is just a sort of minor improvement to your code that you might want to make when you sort of start publishing these games and bringing in a whole bunch more people where some of these API calls could fail due to various reasons beyond your control. So, this is the kind of optimization that you sort of need to make as you go along while you're thinking about publishing these things. So, let's create a local cache called info. And that's just going to be a table that contains the information that we get back from this API call. Right? And we're going to wrap this API call in that protected call. So you pass in the function that you want to protect, So now if that function fails, the error message will not propagate out and sort of break all the other buttons that are sort of being updated. So instead, we have to change this to success because that's what pcall returns. And it also sort of returns the error message. And then inside here, we'll say info ID equals whatever we get back. But what is the ID? Well, we're going to refactor this a bit so that we know that the local ID is whatever the Robux ID is from the button. So we'll grab the ID from the attribute on the button, then we'll make a protected call to get the info for that ID and set it into our cache. And then we can say if there's not an info for that ID because something went wrong, then we could sort of make an error message like this and then just return so we don't break anything else. Otherwise, we're going to use this information that we got to update our label. And so this is just a small optimization you can make to protect yourself from getting a whole bunch of errors in various like uncontrollable circumstances when this API fails for no reason that you can see. So making a protected call and caching the value so that we only do this a few times instead of once for every button for every version of the plot makes a lot of sense. So that's a nice little handy thing that you can do to improve there. But now we're pretty much ready to play our published game and make it public. So of course you should go ahead and you should test out everything as best you can, make sure everything still works. So you can see here I can sort of play my game, buy that dropper. Let's try buying double money forever. So we're still in studio. Oh yeah, that's right. So if you remember, I can't actually test my Game Pass until I delete it because Game Passes don't work the same way that developer products do. But we can test the developer product and we should see we get a whole bunch of money. And so I can go ahead and I can continue making sure that this works. So we can buy extra droppers. We can make sure that we can buy walls. And then we should be able to buy windows and so on. Now, we won't be able to buy the second level, if you recall, until we actually rebirth one time. And we can't rebirth one time until we've finished building this part of the Tycoon. So I can just go ahead and basically test out that everything's working before you make it public. And I think this is pretty okay. As I've got tons and tons of these things, what I should make sure I do is go into my collision groups and make sure that these things can't collide with each other. Because if they can collide with each other and you have hundreds and hundreds of them on the belt, they may get knocked off accidentally. So there's two things that we can do to protect ourselves here. We can go over to our model tab and go into collision groups and make sure that our products do not collide with each other. So you see here, we've cleared this, and so products won't collide with each other. But in case you hit some other sort of bizarre issue, what we could do is reuse that debris service that we saw in Client FX. So if you recall the debris service, we were using this to basically say, hey, when you create one of these floating labels that show how much money you just made by selling something, destroy it after 2 seconds. And you could do the exact same thing on your droppers. So we could grab access to the debris service. And when we instantiate and clone a new drop, one of the things that we can do is say, hey, debris service, I want you to add this item, which is our drop, and I want you to destroy it after 10 seconds or so. So this is a way to sort of protect yourself. If something does fall off the conveyor belt, it won't just live forever and ever and ever and sort of slowly clog up your server as more and more people join. Instead, after 10 seconds, the whole thing will just get destroyed if it didn't already get destroyed by being sold by touching that seller. So there are several things that you're going to want to do to sort of make sure that your game works nicely as you start getting more and more people on it. So there are some examples of the things that you might want to do. But again, make sure that you're ready to publish it before you publish it, but then make sure that it's going to work correctly before you make it public. So to make it public, there's a couple of things that you want to do. If we head on over to here and we go to our settings, the first thing that you're going to want to do is fill in the genre. And the genre you can only really change once every 90 days or something. So make sure that you've picked a good genre for your game and then save it, because you won't get to actually change it again very quickly. So I'm looking for Tycoon, but that doesn't seem to be an option here. So the closest thing to Tycoon is probably simulation. It's not really any of those things. So I'd say it is a simulation. You can only change the genre once every 3 months. So make sure you choose that. Here's Tycoon. So we can say simulation, Tycoon, and then save those changes. So that's going to be the first thing. Yes, make sure you can only change it every 3 months. So pick it correctly. The other thing that you're going to want to do before you set it to public is to basically go down here into audience and maturity and compliance and basically fill in the questionnaire for Roblox. So if you start this questionnaire, I've already done it, so you'll see a start button instead of restart. You go through and it basically asks you a bunch of questions about your game. Things like, does it contain crude humor? Is there some sort of gambling? Are there any jump scares in your game? You fill that in so that Roblox can go, okay, so this game contains gambling. So anyone who has a setting on their account that says, I do not want to see gambling games, won't get this appear in their search result. Right? So you want to fill this in as accurately as possible so that Roblox can show your game to the correct people. And there's nothing stopping you from filling this in over and over again as you sort of update your game, and maybe you add new elements to it, such as, oh, now there's a funny crude humor joke in there. You would go through and you'd say, yes, there's some crude humor. Yes, it's very mild. You know, please show it to the correct people. So going through and filling in this questionnaire as many times as you like is perfectly valid. And then going up and making sure that inside your places value, you've gone to that game and you've sort of updated your icon. So this is a very terrible icon. You'll want a sort of new one for sure. And added any thumbnails that you want to keep people interested in your game. So I've gone ahead and uploaded an icon there. I've gone over to thumbnails and uploaded an icon to experience detail page here. You can also upload thumbnails here, but I think it's actually turned off until you reach 1,000 plus daily users. So make sure you go on to experience detail page tab and upload your thumbnail there. Then you can go back to settings, and I've sort of updated the description a bit with some emojis and information on what you will learn if you watch the series. And then you can switch on over to public and choose save changes. Once you've done that, the game is actually public. So you can go on over to roblox.com and do a search for your game. So in my case, the ByteWeasel Tycoon. Now I'm making sure to add it in quotes because if I don't, it's not going to appear in my search. Because until you've got a whole bunch of players playing the game and Roblox has had time to figure out what sort of players enjoy your game, it probably won't turn up in search. But if you add the quotes around your game name, you will find it. And so there you go, the ByteWeasel Tycoon. You can go ahead and play it now. But if you've been following along with the series, you should know exactly what you expect to find in there. So there we go. I hope you end up publishing your game. And if you do, make sure you leave a comment with the name of your game down below. And hopefully I can check them out and see how you're doing. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, leave a comment, ring that notification bell, all that good stuff. And I will see you next time.